So good evening everybody, you're very welcome to McDowells here in 𝙎𝙬𝙎𝙆 for the launch of Saints Rising, the early history of St. Patrick's Athletic. My name is Jamie Moore from St. Pat's and I'm going to host the evening tonight. The book, which is the first ever written on the history of St. Pat's, charts the club from its formation in 1929 through to 1961. Described by Brian Kerr as an extraordinary book full of brilliant stories, feats and events. The book has been published with the support of the patron saints and the fans of St. Patrick's Athletic, so a huge thanks to those guys and everyone else involved, and also McDowells for having us here tonight. So over the next hour or so we're going to be hearing from Brian Kerr. We'll talk to the author Dermot Looney and some special guests as well. We'll also take some questions from the floor if there are any. I should let you know as well that the Saints Rising books and prints are on sale from Carl Stafford from the club. Carl is just here at the front, just in front of the bar. And also, if you have ordered a book, they're available for collection just at the entrance to the bar tonight. Lisa and Denise are down there. I'm told by Dermot there's a good few uncollected books. So if you ordered and paid for one, it is there for collection. They'll also be on sale from the Super Saints store at Richmond on Sunday at the 𝘍𝙬𝙎𝙆𝙆 game. And they'll go online on Monday as well. They'll be available from the shop during the normal hours that Carl is in the office. And if you haven't already got one, it'd make a great Christmas stocking filler. So let's get the show on the road. Can you please join me in giving a massive Saints welcome to the man behind History St. Pat's and the author of Saints Rising, Dermot Looney. Yes, so perfect. You might just flick that microphone on. I think there might be a little switch for it somewhere. Yeah, just there.
1, 2, 3. Oh, Jesus.
We have you.
When you said an hour, a lot of people groaned.
Yeah, well, we're already 25 minutes late, but however. So we'll talk to Dermot in more detail in a few moments, but just as a general introduction to the night, I've grabbed a paragraph from the biography of the book just for us to talk about for a moment. And it reads, from their formation as a team of young railway workers playing in the Phoenix Park to a golden era of League of Ireland titles and FAI Cup success, St. Patrick's Athletic rose like no other club in Irish football history. Discuss, please.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any kids here, but Shamrock Rovers have about 10 or 12 books about them. Bohemians have at least 12. Shelbourne have several. Athlone Town, Finn Harps. So it's about fucking time that we had one of our own. Sorry, that'll ruin your YouTube video. Sorry about that. You have to bleep that one. So it is so important that we have a history written about this brilliant club, this club we all love, and a club that came from the most humble of backgrounds. So it's just extraordinary to think. And Danny Cummins is here, son of Jim Cummins, one of the founder members. Betty Moran is here, son of Dick Regan, one of the founder members. But these young people, these young lads, these 16, 17-year-old kids founded this football club 93 years ago, and here we are today, you know, going around Europe, following them, supporting them through thick and thin around Ireland. One of the great names in Irish sport. It's about time we celebrated that history, commemorated it, and celebrated ourselves as a club as we approach almost 100 years.
Now, I know you had the book on Twitter last week when it first arrived, and it looks fantastic, it reads fantastic. How did it feel after all the work to finally get your hands on it?
Yeah, brilliant. But like, you know, I did write it, and it's 4 years doing it, but it's the most community-oriented book I can think of in terms of how we got it. So it wasn't, you know, I did a lot of the writing in it, but Joe O'Rourke, who's behind you there, designed the book. Gary Brannigan, who's over there, proofread it. The fans who are here tonight funded the book by doing Kickstarter. The fans who are here tonight, the people whose family members are here tonight, sent me through photographs, sent me through little stories. You know, I met Mick Lawler over in Sofia, and we had a brilliant chat about his background in the club. So, you know, this is a fan production. It's great for me. I'm delighted with it, but this is for the club, and this is for all of us, and all of us have had a role. So the whole thing of 𝑎𝑛 𝙎𝙬𝙎𝙆, that's what it's all about, to strengthen unity, you know, for St. Pat's.
Next on stage, please put your hands together and give a massive Super Saints welcome to Joe O'Rourke, Paul Maguire and Mr. Brian Kerr.
Are we in business? Just before he asked me anything about the book, just amazed at the work that Dermot put in to make this happen. I know, Pat O'Callaghan and other people helped him with lots of work that was done in the past and trying to get the information together. But the majority of you probably haven't had any chance to read any of it yet. For anyone there's any bit of a feeling for Pat's, it's an extraordinary document of history going back to the number of places we played well before 1929, the number of different grounds that we used, the people that worked so hard to keep it going, the publicans in the area, their importance, and that still goes on, and the committee people and Betty's father and all those brilliant people that kept the club going over through the years. It's just a remarkable document and it's fabulous. I'm probably at about page 60. I've read them 60 pages 3 times, I think, to just take it in and have a laugh about so many stories, so much detail, so many names. It's fascinating. But just putting that aside for a minute, and tonight is about history, but it's also a little bit about the now. And there's people that are working in the club now, the likes of Carl, and I see Niall and others around the place, day to day, scrapping to make it the club it is at the moment. And I have to say, and I'm not making this up, the club is in great hands at the moment. He won't take any publicity, doesn't want to show. Gareth is down there, Tom O'Mahony, the president, and so on. The club, there's past chairman here, Phil Mooney's here, and Andy O'Callaghan and others who served great time on committees over the years and led the club in the best way possible through the different eras, different troubled times when we weren't winning many trophies, we weren't near trophies. And they did it with the dedication and the passion and the love for the club that has sustained it. But I actually think now is actually one of the best times ever. We probably win no trophies this season other than Niall's trophy with the under-19s, and congratulations Sean O'Connor and all the lads that work with the under-19s. But if you look at it, the club is actually in a better state than maybe it's ever been, in that the underage teams are doing so well, producing so many players, playing great football, lads playing the international team. I was in touch with young James the other day, James at Banquet. I sent him a text just to congratulate him. I'm fascinated that every week I look at 𝘍𝙚𝙧𝙢𝙕 team and James at Banquet is on the list. Right now he hasn't played yet, but they're sixth in the Italian league, and James is on the bench. This week last year, he was playing the cup final for us, coming on as a sub, the 17-year-old, right? So the work that's going on there, we've seen it with Sam Curtis and all the other young players that played in the team this year. So we've got a lash of underage teams producing players. We've no B team, because that's where I started with B teams. I used to love the B League. We've no B team. We have a first team that's constantly changing due to the way things are in the league and the way players are kind of transient. We don't have the Paul O'Zams and the John McDonalds and the Eddie Gormleys and fellas like that anymore, but we had Ger O'Brien and we had Bermo and we've Jamie Lennon, we've players like that who are sticking around for a few years. But the more important thing is the people running the club in the background, and I think the club is in brilliant hands. What about the support this year? I'm coming to the matches and going, my jeez, what a crowd tonight. What a crowd tonight for, UCD, Drogheda, whatever about the other crowd around Dublin. I mean, and you look at the ground, I think it's a brilliant time, and that's down to the dedication, because the job we all have is to make sure in 20 years' time that the ground, that there's other. I used to fear that when a lot of people died off, I see you, Des, a lot of people died off, that we'd have no one left to go at one stage. I was wondering, it was an ageing group following the club over maybe a period going up to about 5 years ago. But now I see the youth coming in, the madness of the youth, the passion of them. At times they can be out of order and they do the wrong things and so on. But Jesus, I used to give kids stones to throw at the keeper down when I was manager. And then I'd meet fellas off the opposition, they'd say, Jesus, I hate playing here. And I said, why? You'd be throwing stones and all that when you're trying to head corner kicks away. I said, you shouldn't shouldn't head them the way. Go out with the box and let us score, and then you wouldn't have any trouble. But you know, so there's a bit of madness attached to that. We'd like it all to be better. But, you know, isn't it great? Isn't the atmosphere great? Isn't the place, and we get the bottom end sorted out so that we could all go down behind the bottom goal and throw stones at the keeper? I think that'd be the final piece, but, you know, can't get away. But I do think the place is in great hands, and I hope you agree with me, the work that goes on, staying in touch with our community, the emails, and whatever you have it yourself. I'm not a great whatever it is, social media stuff myself. But I love getting the emails with a bit of information on what's happening and who's playing and what time the matches are and the kids. And so, Carl, I hope you're getting a red face now when you hear me talking about this. And all the lads that help out and the lads that have done it in the past, and David that was there and the great work he did. But, you know, we just agree with that. We're in the I mean, we... You know, so players and managers come and go. Players and managers come and go, but once a saint, always a saint. And now I think we're in good nick. The place is buzzing. We'd like it to be, you know, nicer and different, but there's something special about it. I mean, I even kind of think, Jesus, don't do anything with it. It's great the way it is, you know. And I'm sure some of you feel like that, and we need it to be better. We need lots of things better. But I just thought I'd say that as much as this is Dermot's night, and the marvellous work. I'm so delighted to see it. I thought I knew a little bit about the history of the club, and when I started reading the first 10, 20 pages I discovered, I knew fuck all about the club. And I hope you all enjoy it, and tell people about it, and tell relations. A number of people I've met over the years who said to me, oh, my dad, my granddad, he played a few matches for Patsy. And I said, is that right? Now you can check it out because their names will be in the book. And that was the most remarkable story. He has a footnote. I'm not sure what page it is, maybe around page 36. You should tell the story, but I'll just give the briefest bit of it. He has a little footnote where he came across a committee at some stage, and there was a name Looney, he was on the committee. Cecil, is that right? Yeah. And he didn't realise his own granddad had been on the committee at Pats way back in the 30s. And Cecil died, had a heart attack at a Pats Rovers match in Milltown. And Dermot never knew that until he was researching for the book. So he has it in very small writing at the bottom of a page. Imagine finding that out. And just, it's very much a footnote. A lovely story. And then he has another bit. The author's father also played for St Patrick's Athletic in 1957-58. So he's standing up there, and he won't admit it either. Probably if anyone asks him, did you actually play for Pats? But I thought it was the loveliest bit I read in the book so far. But just overall, it's just a fabulous book if you have any little bit of feeling for Pats. But also make sure the kids are going. I'm trying to, you know, I've got a few of my grandkids going now, and some nights I'm just amazed. One night we played, I think it was the Dundalk match, and when I counted up after, there were 7 of my own family were at the Pats match, and I hadn't spoken to any of them about it before it. I hadn't told anyone was on. I hadn't asked them were they buying the ticket. But when I counted up after, there were 7 of them there, and you know, my daughters are spread around a little bit. One of them comes from Balbriggan. But I went out of the ground very proud that night that you pass something on that matters. That matters to this place, matters to Dublin, matters to here, matters to Inchicore, matters just to community. And so we all have to make sure that there's plenty of kids going. So, you know, when we're not able to go anymore, that there's still thousands going, and maybe thousands more than we even have now. Because you think back to Cup final last year, where did they all come from? Where did that crowd come from that day? We know that we had that support. It was out there, but they weren't coming often enough. But a lot more of them have come back this year. So sorry for taking that, Paula. But I had to say that. I had to say that. Is that our time up?
Brian, it normally is when you get up. I don't know why we are sitting up here.
Otherwise we'd have been just talking pure shite. I have to say that.
Well, talking about that, and you as a possible jinx at the club with your first game, which you put into great words in the book. So if you could just take us back to that, 1962, your first game.
Well, Dermot, you know, I was humbled by being asked to do the forward. I said, why me? When you read some of the pages and the history and the dedication of people. But anyway, when I said I'd do it, I said, right, you have to think about it and do something that's not like fair play to you, Dermot. You managed to find out the result of the match in 1931. So I did a piece on about my first day coming to the first match, and it was down here, and we were beaten 8-2 by Cork Celtic. I think the worst defeat we've ever had at home, and but it didn't put me off. Donald Leahy got 5, and I think Pats went to Cork the week after or the week following that and won 1-0 in the cup match with only one change. He changed the goalkeeper O'Callaghan to Denny Dowry. But anyway, I whatever it was that day, the crowd, the surroundings, the passion, it just, I fell in love with it that day. I was going to school across St Michael's at that time, and I started going and I stayed going, and you know, I can remember us being in school and there'd be a midweek cup replay. I remember a particular one with Dundalk, and we couldn't wait to get out of school. I think it was probably a 3 o'clock match, and we weren't getting out of school at 3:30, and we were all, anyway, we ran down, but it not long just was a cup match, but Dundalk had the famous Jimmy Hasty playing, and some of you may have heard of Jimmy Hasty. He was known as the one-armed man. He was a one-armed fella playing centre forward in Dundalk, an extraordinary goal scorer, brilliant player, and it was fascinating to see him at that time. You know, grounds were full to see him, I would have said, as much as see Patrick's or Rovers or anyone else. But that was my first memory of coming here, and you know, I haven't lost the go, I think, as you know.
Just going back to that, you mentioned about not wanting to change anything inside the ground. Now, just let people know what the slope was like back then.
Well, the slope was very obvious, and again in the book it's referred to several times. It's even referred to, not letting too much out of the bag, in relation to a Gaelic match that was played there. There was a Gaelic team played here for a while, and it was 21 aside at the time. So I'd imagine it was hard to get a bit of space in the box. So, you know, you have to say the parallelogram, whatever you'd say. But it was, so there was, but there's a reference to the incline that the team were playing against the incline. But when in 1988, 89, just before the start of the 89 season, it was agreed that we needed to do something. We'd had 5-0 all draws the previous season at home, where teams used to sit in against us, and it was agreed that we should get out and give it a season, try and get the pitch fixed. So a fella, Jerry Tynan, that I worked with in Houston, hey, not this Jerry, you know that Jerry. Jerry did loads of things, but he didn't do the pitch. Jerry Tynan did lots and lots of great things for us. But so Jerry did the pitch, and he said to me, there was a 6'3" drop on the pitch from the top right hand corner here at McDowell's corner down to the Camac end, 6'3". Now I remember standing on the pitch a bit, obviously, when I was the manager, and we used to train there Tuesday and Thursday, and looking up the pitch, it always looked a bit that way. But can you imagine as a defender looking up when the wind was coming down and Pats were getting stuck in, and you know, it was a fairly serious hill and slope. I think it was only maybe Yeovil town had a worse slope, but it was significant. But you know, the proof of the pudding was when we come back and the pitch was so much better. And probably even though Harold's Cross, the pitch wasn't much better, we went to Harold's Cross and won the league, and it probably proved that the team was good enough to win the league once we provided the pitch that we could play on.
And going back then again to your early memories, who were the standout players for us back then?
Well, Denny Lowry was kind of not an instant hero because he didn't play that day, but Ronnie Whelan, absolute hero of mine, and Ginger O'Rourke, of course, and I got to meet all of them as the years went on around football, and Ginger used to come here every week. Tommy Dunn, Willie Payton I liked particularly because Willie was full of tricks. He was a box of tricks, and he'd make a fool out of the full back, and then he'd have a bit of a smile or a wink at you in the crowd. And he was a particular favourite. But you know, as I went through the year, I mean, I loved 𝙎𝙼𝙐𝙉𝙆. I remember Noel Dunn coming to the club from Rovers. I liked Noel. He lived local as well. He lived in Drimnagh. I really liked, and then Willie Roach was after that. He wasn't in those teams. I really loved Willie, and Willie was still going until a few years ago. He was coming here to do a Ringsend family, the Roaches. But those areas, I missed all the 𝘍𝙬 Gibbons thing. I missed 𝘍𝙬 Gibbons. I missed Harry Boland, except I had Harry Boland in my ear for 10 years as the groundsman, and that's another night's work telling stories about Harry. But Harry was a great character, but he told us lots about it. I missed all that with Longo White and Timber Cummins and all those. And you know, it's a fabulous history, and the fact that some of the people are here, the descendants of those great players are here, it's marvellous.
You were telling us earlier, Brian, you mentioned Willie Payton, and again, I think that the way that all the people are just interwoven with each other in this club. But you met a relation of his completely out of the blue.
Yeah, well, I was up in Umbro one day collecting some gear. Unfortunately, it was a bad week for Umbro, where it's the company is gone. But the lad that was there, Patrick, who I'd known on the phone a good bit, I hadn't met him, and I went in to see him, and I'm looking at him, and he says to me, Brian, he said, do you know, would you know my uncle? I said, who was your uncle? He said, Willie Payton. I said, Willie. And I looked at Patrick, I went, Jesus, you're the image of him, right? And he is the image of him. And I said, yeah, Willie was one of my heroes. I said, there's a bit going around of the goal in the cup final against Drums in 61. I said, I'll send it to you. And I sent it to him. I sent him a little text the other day and told him this lovely picture of Willie in the book, I think scoring the goal and they out the winning goal. But yeah, Patrick, absolute ringer for Willie. So he was just, but randomly I met Patrick, and that's the way sometimes in life you meet people who are attached and they have that relationship to the club.
Yeah, I think it's funny about Pats. Everywhere you go, you bump into the most random of people. I actually met someone at a model railway exhibition. Says, "Oh, you're a Pats fan, you're a Pats." But there you go, it's everywhere. Just one thing, this forward that you did, Brian. It's an exceptional read. It's a fabulous introduction. But there's one thing I'd actually just like to read it out, because this is something that we can all identify with, because everyone has their own journey to Richmond Park. But on this one, we carry down Connolly Avenue, past Bulfin Shops, and past St Michael's Church. I'm about to attend my first ever League of Ireland game of football. It's my first real introduction to St Patrick's Athletic FC, and that's something that every single one of us in this room share. We've all had our first game, and we've all got the bug somehow. You can't really explain it, can you? It just gets you.
Well, from my point of view, there was no one in the family. There had no history. My family were kind of my other sports, and people know about the boxing side of it. So it wasn't my brothers or anyone that brought me. It was two lads up the road, Brendan Call and Noel Ryan. Noel Ryan was a schoolboy international. Played for Rialto, a great player. But they brought me, and that was it. After that, I didn't need anyone to bring me anymore. Eamon Coughlin used to come with me, the runner. Eamon would have come down here a lot as well when we were kids. But, you know, as I said in the book, little did I know I'd be still going 60 years later, and that I had a bit of a spell bringing the team around the place a bit, you know.
Yeah, but yours is an incredible journey. I mean, as you say, 60 years on, still back as a fan, being there as manager. And you mentioned in the book about the travels to Iran, Libya, Tunisia. So, you know, it's been an extraordinary journey.
It has, and little, you know, as I said in that little passage, little did I know that I would ever become the manager. I mean, I dreamed of playing for Pats, never got a game, never good enough. I suppose the next best thing was I did dream of being the manager. I used to always think the managers were geniuses because I came to so many games we were losing when we were kids, when I was a kid. And no matter what the score at half time was, I always thought the manager could fix it. I remember when John Coleraine was here, Yogi and Jerry Doyle and various other managers, Jack Burke kept going back. But, you know, even if we were 3 or 4 down at half time, I'd say the manager might fix this and we get 2 goals back and might finish 5-2. But I always thought the manager was a powerful figure, but always someone who had And as a kid, I kind of had it in my head that I might play for Pat someday. I had it in my head that I'd love, but I never really saw it going in that direction. It just happened, and I was lucky enough to get the chance, and they gave me the greatest break I ever had in my life. And I say this to people sometimes, I would bore you too much, but I say, I had 10 years there, and the crowd never booed. And I never forget that. And I think for managers coming here, it's a great thing. They generally give them a bit of time and give them a chance. But the 10 years I had, times have changed. The demands weren't so bad as they are now. The lust for success. I 10 years the crowd never booed. And I used to be afraid to bring me kids in case it turned sour. But there was one particular night I'll never forget. And a good few of you might have been at the match. We played Cove, and we were 4-0 down at half time here. Right, it was a Saturday night, and I remember I was like a madman at half time. I gave the players dogs abuse, told them some of them had never played for the club again. They were the worst players I ever had in my life, and didn't get out in the second half and rescue it. I'd kill it. Anyway, we went out in the second half, and things got worse. If that's Johnny McDonald managed to stick the ball. I was Gareth Bourne's first match in goal. I put Gareth up from the B team. He was saving penalties to beat the band with the B team. I put him in. Johnny McDonald managed to stick a ball over his head from out near the touchline, 50 yards from the goal, over Garrett's head into net. We're 5-0 down. We got a penalty, and Dave Campbell missed the fucking penalty. Right? So I'm expecting it's not, fans, and I was second. I think it might have been the last home game of the season. We were away to Dundalk, was the next match. And I always remember Paddy Eccles in the background giving the Lions man dogs abuse and over the fourth goal being offside. and that's what the talk was after. Jesus, the ref robbed us. 5-0 by Cove, right? We went to Dundalk the next week and we won 2-0 in Dundalk. That was Enda McGill, Lord rest him. He said, hey, that Cove must be some team, he said to me. There was a battle going on against relegation. Limerick were trying to stay up. I was quite happy Limerick were going down because the dressing rooms were shy in Rathban. Anyway.
We could be here all night, but Brian, thank you so much.
Well, look, finally, I'd just like to say, Dermot asked me over to his house the other day to sign a few books that were promised for some mad reason that I'd signed them. So I said to him at the start, I said, Dermot, I feel like an imposter doing this. I said, it's your book. It's not a lifetime work, but it's like, I say he put a lifetime's work into the detail of it. It's just absolutely fabulous work. So I do feel like a bit of an imposter even doing this bit tonight, because it's Dermot's night, it's Dermot's family, his mum and dad are there, his sister's there, not sure if any of your brothers are here. But look, I think it's fair to say on behalf of the supporters, directors, owners, former chairman, fans, wherever I haven't said, just congratulations on a magnificent piece of work that'll never go out of fashion and will always be there for people. What's the true story of Pats? The beginnings of Pats, the start up in the works, the people, the survival, the glory days. The days there wasn't much glory about them and they kept it going. And the true story is there. The modern story it'll be a bit easier to do, and there'll be a few more glory days and that as well, if you ever get round to it or someone else does. But just brilliant. Congratulations, and thanks for having me involved.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks a lot, Brian. We'll pass you back to Jamie.
So, the idea of the book, and I know it's been in your head for a very, very long time now. You might just talk us through the process, the initial idea, putting it together, naming it, getting the photos, doing the research and all that sort of stuff.
I think the name came from you, Jamie, didn't it? You came up with Saints Rising as a hashtag for the club.
Sorry, folks, you mind just having a listen in for the next 10 minutes, please, if you can, down at the back of the bar. Thank you.
They're okay.
Thank you.
I think you came up with that as a hashtag, and I just thought it was a good title for what we're talking about here, the rise of St. Pat's from very humble beginnings on. In terms of research, look, a lot of this is from newspaper archives. But then there's also stuff like, so Pat O'Callaghan has been mentioned tonight, and Pat is down there, I see him here. Pat O'Callaghan kept so much of the history. We all know Pat, we all love Pat, coming in the gate and getting programmes off him. But thanks to Pat, I was able to get lots of some of the early documents, the early minutes that were kept at the club, early photos and so on. So that was, really great to have. And then lots of people who are family members who are here tonight, lots of the Cummins family. There must be about 100 Cummins families associated with Pats, but I got so many photos of them, archives of them, that really helped. And then things like there are a few books and stuff that we refer to in it, so that's where the research really took place, yeah.
Just a quote from the book, and it reads, "It will be easy to describe the football environment of the period covered by this book as being like a different country to modern soccer. There certainly were major differences, one of them being 2 points for a win, but there were plenty of differences from football then to football now."
Yeah, so muddy pitches, that's already been mentioned, right? So if you think what pitches would have been back in the day, out here behind us, but also all the other pitches Pats played on. And they rarely seem to call games off as well, so they went ahead without a blade of grass on the pitch. The heavy boots that some people here would have worn, the heavy brown ball that they would have used, and the stitching on it, which would have, and frequently did, split people's heads open. So, you know, the formations were totally different. The WM formation, and you had your two full backs, you had your your centre half and your two wing backs, and you had your 5 forwards, and that's throughout the story of this book. The kind of 4-4-2 thing didn't come in until the 60s, really. So it's a different era in that sense, but it's not that different, because football is football. So people went to games, they cheered on the team, they saw great play, they wanted to see great goals, they wanted to see skill, they wanted to see tight matches. And they went to games like we do on buses and trains, and you know, getting in away games. There were rivalries. There's great rivalries with Shamrock Rovers going back. Great rivalries with then some of the junior clubs going back to Belleville in the early days, and Mount Pleasant and St Paul's, who played in Richmond Park at the same time as St Pat's in the 40s. So lots of the things we have as football fans today, they had back then too. But of course, yeah, it was different in terms of the way football was played, I suppose.
Tell us about the group of teenagers from the Railway Works who wanted to play football and decided effectively to form the club.
Yeah. So, you know, where did St. Pat... I didn't know, right, when I started this, and Pat O'Callaghan and a small number of people, I'm sure, did know, but I didn't know this, and we've gotten the word out now. We're a railway club. So St. Pat's are a railway club, like, I don't like them, but like Man United, who are a railway club starting in Newton Heath, like Dundalk, who are a railway club as well. There's plenty of them around. So Pats were formed by these 17, 18, 16-year-old lads in the works, and they worked for the GSR Works. GSR had a football club, and they didn't want to take on a second team, a youth team for these lads. So supposedly, and Pat Dunphy, whose relatives I think are here, tells a story that they met here in McDowells. Now it may have been here, it may have been one of the other local hostelries, but the story goes anyway, they met here in one of the rooms, and they decided, no, we'll form our own club. So that was 1929. And going into 1930, so we form our own club. And where they got the name was, there were lots of other clubs called St. Patrick's and St. Patrick's Athletic before in Inchicore. So that's where our name comes from. The original St. Patrick's was 1898, named after St. Patrick's Terrace, which some of you will know up in the Inchicore Works. So that's where our name comes from. But these lads, they met here, they got together a guinea, I think it was, which was £1 and a shilling, and they went into the LFA headquarters up in Parnell Square and entered the team in the league. Now, 1929 they played probably informally. They didn't enter competitive football until 1930-31, but they won the league at the first attempt, the intermediate league, based out of Phoenix Park. So that was our first home ground. We started at the very, very bottom. There's nothing below the intermediate league. So unlike, you know, some other clubs who came in with lots of money and big, you know, backing behind them, we started at the very, very bottom and had to work our way up.
So if we move to 1951, jump a little bit forward, and the line goes, the Saints were coming, and after 3 failed attempts to get into the league, or 3 times where the league wouldn't allow St. Pat's in, 1951 entry was granted, and at the end of that season the Saints were champions.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant story. So Pats are the Leinster Senior League, as we call it now, Leinster League Division 1 champions 4 times in a row. They're winning everything around them. They're beating all the League of Ireland teams in the cup competition. So they beat Shelbourne in 1947 in the Leinster Senior Cup. The headline is brilliant. I have a copy of it in the book. David versus Goliath. Shells, how the mighty are fallen, right? So this non-league team, St. Pat's, beats them. Then Pat's goes to the next round and beat Bows in the next round and win the Leinster Senior Cup that year, which was a much bigger deal than it is nowadays. The next season, they knocked Shamrock Rovers out of the FAI Cup. They also beat Drumcondra, who are a big Dublin League of Ireland club. So they keep beating League of Ireland clubs. But when Pats apply for admission to the League of Ireland in 48 and 49 and 50, they keep being told no. Transport got elected ahead of Pats one of the years. They give various reasons why they won't let Pats in. They sound fairly spurious to me, and what I think is the Dublin clubs didn't want Pats to come in. They knew they were a big club. They knew they were going to be rivals to them. What I don't think anyone realised was how good they were, though, because they came in their first season. In those days, there was a shield before the league, so all the teams played each other once. And Pats did quite well in the shield. They came fourth or fifth, gave a good account of themselves. But when the league started in November, around November to April, Pats went on a brilliant run and really shocked the system by becoming champions of Ireland. And I don't think, I've looked into it, there's many examples of a non-league team coming up to a top flight anywhere in Europe of an established league. The League of Ireland was 30 years on the go at that stage and winning it at their first attempt. So they were history makers. They were a brilliant team. They played great football. They scored, so many goals, particularly 𝘍𝙎𝙎 that season. And books like this and stories like this, it's very important we pay tribute to them and don't ever forget about them. And there were people here up to a short time ago who were part of that team, and it's very important we don't forget them.
So 2 more leagues followed in 54, 55 and 55, 56, FAI Cups in 59 and 61. Overall, as we know, the club have won 9 leagues, 4 FAI Cups, 4 League Cups and all the brilliant European memories. But there's a great line after that roll of honour that reads, most importantly of all, the club has survived. And St Pat's exists now because of the dedicated team of men and women who organised the matches, raised the funds, lined the pitches, built the ground, washed the kit, travelled the length and breadth of the country to support their team.
Yeah, well, there's a reason we're not here tonight talking about Nugget United, who played in the Intermediate League with Pats that year, or Gardenville or Belleville, or any of those clubs. There's a reason we're here commemorating and celebrating St Patrick's athletic history, and it's because of those people. It's because of the players, because they had brilliant players. They played great football and won so well. They won the Intermediate League, they won the AUL Division 3, 2, 1, Leinster Senior League Division 2 and 1 before they made that League of Ireland. But it's also because of the officials, the people off the pitch, but it's also because of the supporters, men and women, and I've said that all along, and I say it in the introduction to the book. There wouldn't be, a Christy Fagan, a Chris Forrester, any of the players we have now without the background of Jim Cummins, who helped found the club, without Mrs. Hines down in Richmond Cottages, who sold the jerseys in the early days. So that we stand on their shoulders. And Pat Callan, who's down there, his best line is, we are just minding this club. So we're all minding the club in this generation for the next one to be passed on. And we're minding them, and now what we're able to do is pass them on the written history of the early years of the club.
Very well said. Now, we won't talk about all of the grounds because there are quite a lot of them, but any stories come to mind about Richmond or about any of the other places that the club played and the journey over the years to get back here to the permanent home where, as Brian mentioned, the crowds have been so brilliant over the last few years?
Like, Richmond is the most special place to us, but it's not where we started. We started in the Phoenix Park, went to Bluebell, up where Mr. Price is on the Kylemore Road. That's where that ground seems to have been. Then went to Chapel Lizard for a couple of years. Then went back to Bluebell, and then came here. 1939 we started here. So if you look on Wikipedia, we have to change that. Whoever's good on Wikipedia should change it. It says Pats moved into Richmond Park in 1930. We didn't move till 39. We did play a match here in 1930. It was an away match and we drew 5-5. It was our first game here. What a game. So Richmond is very much, and Joe McDowell, who was from McDowells, was the club president. He was the man who kind of organised that deal for Pats to be long-term leasees here, long-term tenants here. But there's been, when they got to the League of Ireland, they couldn't use here, and they really wanted to use Richmond, and they tried their absolute best. They had extraordinary plans, that the committee at the time, for a 25,000 capacity stadium. They were going to terrace the Camac, and my dad's down there tells me the story of a mould they built to go on top of the Camac and build a terrace on top of it. There was going to be, a very substantial ground here, but they kind of didn't have the funds. It was volunteer times. All the committee were volunteers. What they did manage to do was build that old main stand, which many of you will remember. And the story of that old main stand is that plenty of the material from it was procured from the works, right? So whether it came there, and even Arthur Costello, who was a club committee member, talks, and I tell this story in the book, that he got the guttering and the little clips for the guttering and so on for that. And the priest, the chaplain of the club, was walking by and he said, "Father, look, he worked up in the bus works up in Spa Road. He said, Father, I've taken these, is that a mortal sin?" And Father said, "Well, if it's for the club, it's not sin at all, you're absolved." So that club, that ground was built at that stage, the 50s renovation by the committee members, in the same way as Brian told. They managed to get it over the line back in 91, 92, 93.
I've got a couple more questions, but if anyone does want to ask anything from the floor, Paul has the wireless mic there, so just grab him if you'd like. What was the most interesting thing you learned that you didn't know when researching the book?
Well, the story of where we come from is the most interesting thing for us. Working class team, working class people, ordinary people. We never had much money, and we were never that fashionable, and we still aren't. And there's plenty of people that you know, Jamie, from your work in sports journalism and the media and politics and everything else, who get attracted to fashionable causes. And there's also clubs that have a lot of money and have big money backers behind them, who have dominated Irish football for a long time. But we managed to stay there with them all the time. We've never been relegated. We've stayed up on the top flight since we entered it in 51, and that's the achievement of this great football club.
Paul, we have a question from the floor.
We do. The aforementioned Mr. 𝙍𝙬𝙐𝙉𝙎, editor of the programme.
Dermot, sorry, who was playing here in 1930 when we played our first game? Was the one question.
Belleville.
Okay.
Who are from Bluebell, yeah.
And what was the first indication that we had a match programme? What year was that?
Yeah, it's in one of the earliest ones in the book, in about 1950 or so. It's in the first batch of photos there. So they did produce programmes, not as substantial as we have now, 4-pagers, but there was always little good tidbits in them to have. So John Owens, who's not here tonight, but a lot of people know John, has been so helpful. And in terms of the programme as well, firstly you should all buy a programme, but the programmes from the 90s, which people remember, those great big A4 ones, Tom Hanley, who's also not here tonight, but Tom Hanley did a series of interviews with those players of the 40s, the 50s and the 60s. And they have proved so helpful to me in compiling this book. So when I talk about this being a community effort, there's no way I could have written that without the programme work that was done. Just on Belleville, though, that team who played here 5-5 with Pats in that first game, they were Pats rivals in that first season. Intermediate league, mainly played in the Phoenix Park, but occasionally here and some other grounds. So it came down, Belleville and ourselves went into the last weekend of games in 1931 at this stage, level on points, right? Pats got a walkover. So that was quite common in those days. Get your walkover, get your 2 points. So then Belleville, to finish level on points, would need to win their game. So that was fair enough. And the Pats fans apparently went to this game. I think it was in the Phoenix Park. Belleville played a team called Gardenville. Gardenville were 2-0 up with 10 minutes to play. It looked like Pats were going to win the league. And somehow, Gardenville players handled the ball 3 times in a row in the penalty box. Belleville missed the first penalty but scored the other 2 and then got a last minute goal to win the match. So, I mean, what was going on there, right? So that stuff was going on in football forever, I suppose. But Pats did have to play them then in a playoff because there was no goal difference in those days, and Pats beat them in the playoff. But we could be... yeah, well done to that Pats team in 1930-31, yeah.
Thanks very much, Dermot.
Dermot, Chris, who played in Richmond before St. Pat's?
Say it again.
Who played in Richmond Park before St. Pat's?
So it's in chapter 8 of the book, Noel. There's been loads of them. So, the story was briefly told here by Brian. This was a GA ground for the time, but also we think very, very likely that lots of the army soldiers played from Richmond Barracks. There's no, I've been on to Kew Barracks and stuff in England to try and get absolute proof of it. I've struggled to get it. But there were lots of football, regiments played football here at Richmond in Inchicore, so it surely was here in the 1890s, 1900s, 1910s. And then in the 1920s and 30s, there were loads of different clubs here. Inchicore United played here. And then the only League of Ireland team to play here before Pats were a team called Brideville, who were around in the 20s and 30s. They continued to the 40s, but that was their home ground here as well. So plenty of teams, and they're all in chapter 8 in the book.
There's loads of great stories in the book. Oh, we've another question from the floor. Yes, Paul, fire away, please.
How's it going, Dermot? I just want to know, was there any inspiration for the name of the book? And if so, what was the inspiration?
Jamie's hashtag Saints Rising that he did a while ago, and just the idea of us rising up, that's the main point of it. And I see there the SEI, thanks Mossy, like the SEI have been brilliantly supportive as well in getting the book off, and I have some books to present to them later as well, which I'll do. But fans have been a massive part of Pats and fan culture, so we talk about that in a later chapter about the Shed-Out Invincibles of today. They had their predecessors back in the 50s going to games, and Betty, who's still down there, I think at one stage was jabbing people with an umbrella to get out of the way and so on. But yeah, that's at Saints Rising. The idea of a rising football club whoever does the second book, and it won't be me, hopefully, we'll call it, I don't know, Saints Alive or something like that, because we've risen in this book. We had to keep going.
Saints Alive. Yeah, very good, very good. Last one for me, and we'll take another one over there, Paul, just in a moment, if you wouldn't mind, please. There's stories in the book about ice cream vans, horns, cup final bets, but the controversy at the end of the first season, 30-31 is a story that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, no, we did that one there. The ice cream story is about Pats played UCD-B in 1936 in Bluebell, and there was no ref. The refs frequently failed to show up. I don't know why, but this particular game the ref didn't show up, and they tried to agree a deputy between the two teams. So they found someone on the sideline who was going to ref the game. That was very common, happened an awful lot, but he had no whistle, and he wasn't allowed to just run around shouting free or whatever else. So he just, they were really stuck, and it looked like the game wouldn't go ahead. So a man was passing by on an ice cream cart, and he had one of these like hand horns with like a little rubber thing you squeeze, and like a trumpet kind of thing. And so he ran around, the referee ran around the pitch with this going, and like, you know, brilliant stories. Every season there's a story, and that's the one from 35-36.
Wow, brilliant. Yes, Paul?
Just earlier, you related to a priest earlier on. I would just wonder whether it would have been the late Father Mulvaney. He was a great patron of Pats at that time.
It may very well have been, yeah, it's in the book. I looked that one up for you. Yeah, it may very well have been, and there were chaplains who were very important, and yeah, that's probably who it was. Yeah. Yeah, got absolved anyway. Yeah.
Finally, what's next to in terms of the book for you, Anthony? You want to finish on?
No, look, this has been great. I really appreciate everyone coming tonight. There's loads of people I should have thanked, and look, I've thanked them in the book, but I'm thankful to everyone really for coming, and I'm thankful particularly for some of our older fans, some of the people who are relatives or descendants of players who played for us in the past, and it's a community effort, it's a club effort. We've got it now. Carl is selling them, and those lovely art prints, which I think look gorgeous in the frames as well, are being sold. And if you didn't get a copy on your way in from the Kickstarter collections, you might want to get one before we throw them out. But they will be in the club shop on sale on Sunday as well. But thanks to you, Jamie, and thanks to Carl, and thanks to all the club who've been great and supportive of everything we've done.
Thank you. So our last quote from the book reads, "The Rise of the Saints is an extraordinary tale. It tells the story of perseverance, team spirit, and strength and unity. It's a story of a football club which made its own history, and the man who wrote this brilliant book is Dermot Looney. Dermot Looney, thank you.